بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد ذي القدر العظيم وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين والتابعين لهم بإحسان وهدى إلى يوم الدين. Alhamdulillah, in our sessions on the most beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we've reached another of the sets of names, the names that are mentioned together because they have contrasting meanings. And these are Al-Mu'izz and Al-Mudhill, the one who honors and the one who abases. So this is after what we've seen in the previous class on the name Al-Khafid Al-Rafi', the one who lowers and the one who raises, the one who lowers and the one who raises. So we saw Al-Khafid Al-Rafi'. Today we're looking at Al-Mu'izz Al-Mudhill, the one who honors, who gives izz, right? Honor, and Al-Mudhill, the one who gives idlal, which is removing honor or putting down, abasing. And these return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's absolute majesty, right? And they return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will and power, right? He can honor whomever He wills, and He can abase whomever He wills. And whatever He wills comes to pass, and there's nothing stopping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will to come to pass. So what is the definition of Al-Mu'izz and of Al-Mudhill? Imam Zarruq tells us that Al-Mu'izz huwa mu'ti al-'izz liman sha'a min 'ibadihi. That the Mu'izz, the one who honors, is the one who grants izz, honor, to whomever He wills of His servants. Right? So the possessor of honor, inna al-'izzata lillahi jami'a. All honor belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And He grants that honor, one, to whomever He wills, and in terms of acquiring it, one's honor is to the extent of one's being ascribed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through one's turning to Him in the ways of turning to Him. Right? And izz itself has a sense of, has several senses in Arabic. Izz has a sense of honor because it has a sense of power, right? And being and being above others, right? And it has a sense of being triumphant, being triumphant. But because it has that sense of being above others, it also has the sense of having comprehensive awareness, because the one who's above has comprehensive awareness. And Al-Mudhill, the one who abases is the one who overwhelms whomever He wills of His creation by putting them down, okay? Or by taking away the state of honor that they had. So this is how Imam Zarruq explains it. Imam Ghazali says that Al-Mu'izz huwa alladhi yu'ti al-mulka man yasha. Right? That Al-Mu'izz, the one who honors, is the one who gives dominion to whoever He wills. Because the Aziz is the one who is in authority, right? Because they're ascendant, because it has a sense of rising up, right? So the Aziz can be the ruler or the one in authority. And that's where, for example, the one mentioned in Surah Yusuf, Al-Aziz, they differ. Was he the ruler of Egypt, or was he governing, like some kind of vizier or a minister? Right? Because Al-Aziz is the one who has Izz, who's ascendant. Right? So he's the one who gives of his dominion to whomever he wills, right? And Al-Mudhill, the one who obeys, who takes dominion, rank, authority, wealth, recognition from whomever he wills. So, and this is of course alluding to the Quranic verse, يُؤْتِ الْمُلْكَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ, that he gives of his dominion to whomever he wills, right? And he takes it from whomever he wills. So he chose that Quranic usage. Then he explains what is mulk, right? What is dominion? What is true wealth, right? True attainment. So as I said, وَالْمُلْكُ الْحَقِيقِي, right? True attainment, true wealth, فِي الْخَلَاصِ عَنْ ذُلِّ الْحَاجَةِ, is to be free of the abasement of neediness. And al-haja here, what kind of al is this? What kind of al is this? It is a referential al, right? It is al-ahad. And it's not from the lowliness of all need, but rather the lowliness of need of created things. Because the quality of neediness to Allah, that is, realizing it is attainment itself. Right? But here, the true wealth, true attainment, right, which is what the one who has izz, who has honor, possesses, is to be freed, have khalas, which is to be free of the abasement of neediness, i.e., to created things. وَقَهْرِ الشَّهْوَةِ, and to be free of the power of desires over one. Right? And from the blameworthiness, right, and deafness of ignorance, right? To be freed of ignorance, right? And ignorance here is not the absence of knowledge, right? Ignorance is not the absence of knowledge, but the ignorant is the one whose state and conduct does not correspond to what knowledge entails. Right? Ignorance is not just the absence of knowledge, but it is also for one's state and conduct not to correspond to what knowledge entails. That is ignorance. Right? Because it's not simple, knowledge that fire burns is not simply that one says, oh, fire burns. True knowledge is when one's state and conduct corresponds to that knowledge. So you know it's fire, so you stay away from it, and you don't stick your finger in it. You don't come close to it lest you get burnt. And that is true knowledge. Right? So the one who's honored, therefore, is the one who rids themselves of lowliness. Right? And there's two aspects. One seeks to rid oneself of that lowliness, of neediness for created things, of being possessed by one's desires, of the ignorance, either of not knowing what is right, or the ignorance of not upholding what is right in one's state and actions. And one seeks that, and it is Allah who grants it. It is Allah who grants it. And He may grant it because of your seeking, or He may grant it as pure honor, right? As pure honor without means. Right? So Imam Ghazali then continues that, talking about the one who honors, right? He said, فَمَنْ رَفَعَ الْحِجَابَ عَنْ قَلْبِهِ حَتَّى شَاهَدَ جَمَالَ حَضْرَتِهِ وَرَزَقَهُ الْقَنَاعَةَ التي استغنى بها عن خلقه وأمده بالقوة والتأييد حتى استولى بها على صفات نفسه فقد أعزه وآتاه الملك عاجلا. Right? So he said, who is the one who's honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? So he gives us a definition of the one honored by Allah. That whoever lifts the veils from their heart until they behold the beauty of the divine presence. And Allah is present with you. You're the one who's absent from Him. And that's the humility of heedlessness. The abasement of heedlessness. He is with you wherever you may be. You're heedless of Him. Right? So you're with the King, but you ignore the King. Right? And that's right. So, as Ibn Ata'illah says, لَيْسَ الْحَقُّ بِمَحْجُوبٍ عَنْكَ. The real is not veiled from you, but rather you are veiled through your heedlessness from Him. Because if anything were to veil Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it would encompass Him. And anything that encompasses another has power over it. Right? And Allah has power over all things. He is Al-Qahiru fawqa ibadihi. He is the one in absolute dominion and power. Not created things. So whoever raises the veil from their heart until they behold the beauty of the divine presence, right? They become conscious of all. They become actively conscious as though they behold Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And are granted contentment, qana'ah, right? Of which it has come in prophetic tradition that contentment, qana'ah, is a treasure that is never extinguished, right? Which is a state of acceptance of what Allah provides for one. Right? From which one frees oneself of feeling need for Allah's creation. Right? And whomever Allah grants the assistance by His power and facilitation, so that they are able to rectify the states of their self. So they characterize themselves by the traits pleasing to Allah, and lift and remove the traits that are displeasing to Allah. Such is the person whom Allah has honored and granted dominion and true wealth, and true attainment in the immediate, meaning in this life, before the eternal honoring in the next. Right? And such a person, so this is in this life, right? وَسَيُعِزُّهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. And such a person will be further honored eternally in the hereafter, بِالتَّقْرِيب, by being drawn close to Allah, وَيُنَادِيهِ, and they will be called out to, and Allah will call out to them, يَا أَيَّتُهَا النَّفْسُ الْمُطْمَئِنَّةِ. O tranquil soul, right? إِرْجِعِي إِلَى رَبِّكَ. Return to your Lord. Return to your Lord. إِرْجِعِي إِلَى رَبِّكِ رَاضِيَةً مَرْضِيَّةً. Pleasing, or pleased and pleasing. فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي. Enter amongst my true servants. وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. And enter my garden. Right? So this is izz. This is honoring. And this is honoring. Right? That it is true honor is for Allah to lift the veil from one's heart so one is realized in the meanings of faith. Right? Secondly, one is granted contentment. So one does not feel neediness for creation. And that feeling neediness is not just the explicit that, oh, I feel need for so and so, but that one isn't imprisoned in the world of means. Right? That you fear others. You see them as benefiting and harming you. You're not imprisoned by what other people think of you. Right? But rather you make the right choices. And an honor is in striving against one's lower self and lower urges, right? This is in this life, right? And then it has eternal consequences in being granted eternal closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And the opposite is abasement, right? Imam Ghazali says, and whoever directs their gaze towards creation, feeling neediness for them, and have avidness, hirs, and who doesn't have contentment with sufficiency, right? And so many, will be dragged down by Allah's devising until they become deluded regarding themselves and remain in the darkness of ignorance. Such a person has been abased, humiliated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and stripped of the blessing that they had. Right? And Allah can do both and grant both to whomever He wills. For He is the one who honors and the one who abases. He honors whomever He wills and He abases whomever He wills. Right? But it is our choices that are, what typically result in our being abased by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He Himself tells us. Right? Okay. And Imam Ghazali then points to the meaning of the one who's characterized by being mu'izz. How can you be someone who embodies this meaning of honoring, right, yourself, right? And it's similar to how we talk about al-rafi', that every servant who is used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in facilitating the means of honor for others through their hands, meaning through their actions, and their tongue, namely their words, right, is someone who shares in some of the meanings of this quality of being mu'izz, the one who grants honor by transmitting knowledge, by transmitting benefits to others, facilitating for others the means of honor with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a little of what Imam Ghazali mentions regarding this attribute. Imam Zarruq, rahimahullah, tells us regarding this name that من عرف أنه المعز لم يتعزز بغيره. Whoever knows that Allah is the grantor of honor doesn't seek honor through other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? ومن عرف أنه المذل لم يتذلل لسواه. And if one knows that Allah is the one who abases, does not allow themselves to be abased by any other. The one doesn't feel needy and weak before any besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, how does one draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this name? He says in two ways. Through ta'alluq and takhalluq. Through connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by this name, and by these two names, Al-Mu'izz, the one who honors, and Al-Mudhill, the one who abases. he says, تعلقا أن تستنصره الله تعالى وأن تستنصره تعالى وتتوجه إليه في إثبات العز لك, is that you seek to give victory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And to turn to Him in affirming honor, affirming the means of honor in your life. Right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ. If you give victory to Allah, He will give victory to you. And so Imam Zarruq here is alluding to the Quranic verse. Right? إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ. If you give victory to Allah, meaning if you take, he says, أن تستنصره الله أن تستنصره تعالى, if you seek to give victory to Him, i.e. that how do you give victory to Allah? By directing yourself to what is pleasing to Allah, to the means of honor, right, that Allah has indicated for you, the means of turning to Him, the ways that would then make Allah grant you that honor. So you turn to Him, have sidq tawajjuh, have true turning to Him in those ways, and because izz itself, izz has a sense of triumph. Right? That's some people translate al-izz as triumph, right? And Allah being al-aziz, right? The al-aziz can mean the triumph. Many translate it as the triumphant. It has a sense of ascendancy. So it also has a sense of honor, because honor is ascendancy. Has a sense of dominion, because it's ascendancy. It also has a sense, Al-Aziz is the one who has comprehensive awareness of things. They're high above. So you give victory, you make Allah triumphant in your life, and He will grant you triumph and honor. Right? وَنَفْيِ الذُّلِّ عَنْكَ, and you negate all means of being humiliated, right? Abased, right? Put down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? By turning away from the means of dishonor, namely, disbelief, innovation, corruption, sin, heedlessness, low resolve. That's how you connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Al-Mu'izz, Al-Mudhill. And this is manifest in one's choices and one's decisions in life. There's choices that are means of honor, right? And there's choices that are means of abasement. And there's responses that are means of honor and responses that are means of abasement. Which is why very often blessings become means, right, of one being abased. Because the blessing comes and the blessing comes down and it sweeps you away from the straight path. Because the blessing is a burden too. It comes down, but instead of you have to turn in the right way. Because if you take it's like a catch. Right? If you take this blessing in the wrong way, you could fall off the straight path. Right? And if you turn the right way, it could propel you on the straight path, right? Which is thankfulness. But many people are busied by the blessing away from its bestower, which is why the first step of thankfulness is what? Is an la ta'asi Allah bima an'ama alayk, as Imam Junayd said. It's that you not disobey Allah with what He blessed you with. Right? And so you get a blessing, but the blessing becomes a means of the manifestation of Allah being Al-Mudhill, the one who abases. How? It was manifest through the choice that you made, the response that you had. So your husband got you a gift, but he got you the wrong gift. Okay? So how do you respond to that? You respond in a good way, and it'll be a means of honor. And actually, even in worldly terms, you might get something even better. Okay? And there's a story to that, right? I pre-ordered, I was actually on the Apple site when the announcement was being made, because when Apple takes their site offline, during their major product announcements. So I was on there refreshing it because I wanted to pre-order the new iPad for someone and for my wife, and I ordered it. But initially there's so much traffic on it, the site was really slow. So I ordered the wrong one. I ordered the 16 gigabyte version, where it was really the way my wife uses it. She needs at least a 32 gig version. So it came, but it was way too small. Like this, the apps and data that she uses just simply wouldn't fit. She'd have to basically remove everything, which kind of defeats the purpose. She responded really, in a really dignified way to that. So it comes out immediately. The higher capacity version was on its way. But there's a connecting to it that's manifest in one's choices, and how you respond, right? The responses, both to destiny as it unfolds, is a means of honor, right? It's a means of honor, or of abasement. And the responses to the actions of others are a means of honor. If you uphold good character in your response, that's a means of honor. Okay? Regardless of what others did. Or it could be a means of abasement if you respond with the contrary. So that's connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And then characterizing oneself, takhalluq, which is the other aspect of how one remembers Allah through His names, is that you honor everything that you've been commanded to honor, right? That you honor everything that you've been commanded to honor. And Allah Himself, لِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ وَلِرَسُولِهِ, right? And to His messenger, right? وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and by the people of faith, to the extent of that quality in them, of faith, of righteousness, right? وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ, whoever venerates the symbols of Allah, فَإِنَّهُ مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ, it is from the mindfulness that is in hearts, right? Which is from Surah Al-Hajj, right? And that you abase the thing that Allah has commanded to be abased. So you look down on sin and wrong and injustice and so on, okay? Completely, okay? Without looking down on the sinner or the one who does wrong, the one who hates the quality and not the one who possesses it, okay? So that's how one characterizes oneself, right? That one honors all that Allah has commanded us to honor, right? And that's from Deen. Shah Waliullah Dahlawi in his work Hujjatullah al-Baligha says that the central meaning in all of all religion is ta'zeem, is veneration. Absolute veneration for Allah, right? And relative veneration, but at the highest levels, for all that Allah has honored, which is everything that has an ascription to Allah. You honor the messenger because he is the messenger of Allah. You honor the Qur'an because it is the book of Allah. You honor the believers because they believe in Allah. You honor the righteous because they have made right their relationship with Allah. You honor all of Allah's creation because it is the creation of Allah. Everything. Right? And that's from honoring and likewise of abasing. Imam Sanusi has his beautiful, very brief work on the 99 names, gives us a very useful summary of what we've mentioned. Right? He says that Al-Mu'izz, the one who honors, is the Al-Mu'azzim, the one who gives in a high rank, right? Who grants greatness, the one who honors, Al-Mu'izz, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the one who grants greatness, tremendousness, to whomever He wills of His creation. Whether it is worldly greatness or next worldly greatness. Right? Whether through His words or His actions or however Allah wills. And the servant's share of this name is to grant honor, is to seek honor themselves. Ta'azzuz is to seek honor with what Allah has honored. And if you seek honor by what other than what Allah has honored, it is a form of abasement. And the Prophet Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu said that نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام. We are a people, we're a nation, a community whom Allah has honored with Islam. أعزنا Allah, He's granted us izz, honor, rank through Islam. If we seek honor through other than it, He will abase us. And this was from His response to, who was this? Who did He respond to through this? It was from His response to the noble companion Amr ibn al-As, who was leading the expedition into Egypt. But they realized, Sayyidina Amr ibn al-As felt that they had far too few men for the expedition. So he wrote to Sayyidina Umar asking for reinforcements. Right? To be mightier as an army. Sayyidina Umar refused to send military reinforcement. He said, we are a people whom Allah has honored. Izz is also might. Right? Triumph. We are people whom Allah has granted. We're a community, a nation, right? Whom Allah has honored, granted might, triumph through what? Through Islam. Right? If we seek honor, triumph, might through other than it, then Allah will abase us. He will grant us dhul. So what did He do instead? He sent Qurra, who are Qur'an reciters, but these were people of knowledge of the Qur'an, to grant understanding and inspiration to the army, right? Instead, right? Right? And what are those means of seeking honor for oneself by what Allah has honored? Imam Sanusi explains. He gives two keys to honor. One, he says, min luzumi ta'atihi, right? From holding oneself to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That is the means of izz, of honor. The other means of honor is to connect oneself with the people honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the people of electhood with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَالتَّعَلُّقْ بِأَذْيَالِ الْأَعِزَّاءِ مِنْ أَهْلِ وِلَايَتِهِ. That's how you attain unto honor. Right? It's obedience, but then to connect oneself with, and he says بِأَذْيَال, to hold on to their tails, literally, right? Like of their coats, like you latch onto them. And you can't, because he says if you can't keep up with someone, if you can't keep up with them, you hold on to their lower garment, so that you're catching up to them. Of the people of His elected. And this is not something He's making up. Right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Hadith Qudsi of the way of drawing close to Him, He tells us, my servant draws, that whoever shows enmity to a friend of mine, I declare war upon. My servant draws close to me by nothing more beloved to me than what I've made obligatory upon them. And my servant continues to draw close to me through supererogatory works until I love them. Right? But in that Hadith Qudsi is a point, right? That if showing enmity to those beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a means of divine wrath, it is understood from that connecting with them, seeking them, being with them, benefiting from them is the means of divine good pleasure. Why? Because the means of divine good pleasure is seeking knowledge and living knowledge. And these are the exemplars, these are the possessors of knowledge, and the one who exemplify its virtues. And so if you seek them out, you will gain the means of seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thereby attaining His good pleasure. Which is why the two matters are mentioned together. That whoever shows enmity to a friend of mine, I declare war upon. It also is pointing through the indication by opposite, right, that whoever loves them will attain closeness to Allah. Why? Because they're the people of knowledge, so you'll benefit from their knowledge. They're the people of virtue. By being with them and by being inspired, guided by them, you will attain virtue and guidance. And also because they're blessed people. At the end of the hadith, Qudsi, what does it mention? If such a person asks me, I will indeed grant them. And if they seek my refuge, I'll indeed grant it. And that's one of the benefits of being with the righteous, that you'll be encompassed by their dua, by their attention. And these are people whose dua is answered, and whose concern is expressive of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's concern. And which is a meaning expressed in so many other texts. Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab, said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A person will be with those whom they love. That has the absolute sense that if you truly love Allah, then you'll be with Him. But also in relative terms, because the hadith relates to a person loves others, may love some people, but they're not at their level. But a person is with those whom they love. Right? So, if you seek closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connect yourself with those beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a means of honor. Right? Expressed in so many verses of the Qur'an. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. O you believe, be mindful of Allah and be with those who are true. Right? And you'll attain that honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And Al-Mudhill, the one who abases, right, is that one puts down that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called upon us to put down, such as one's nafs, okay? And worldliness. And one puts it down, one suppresses one's nafs, one's worldliness, one's caprice, and the shaitan's urges. And that's from character of Al-Mudhill, that one puts down, one abases that which Allah has commanded us to abase, and your enemies are four. Right? Your most immediate enemies are four. The nafs, your ego, right? Which is all your wayward tendencies, right? Your worldliness, which is your being distracted from all that distracts you from Allah. Right? And so much of dunya is deen. And so much of deen in people's life is dunya. Okay? That so many worldly things that people do is deen. Seeking a livelihood is deen. Spending time with one's parents is deen. Visiting one's relatives is deen. Okay? Taking care of one's family is deen, if one's intention is there. And so much of what people think is deen is dunya. It's distracting them from Allah. People go to a religious gathering, they go to a dars, so they take half an hour to get ready. They take care of their appearance. If they spend 15 of those minutes preparing for the class they're going to, right, they may look shabby, but that is honor, right? يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah raises by many degrees those who believe amongst you and are granted knowledge numerous ranks, right? But people raise the wrong thing and put down the wrong thing. Okay? So many people take care to be careful about the form of their prayer, right? So they think that's deen, but their heart is in dunya. So that prayer of theirs was a worldly prayer, right? Where someone might be in the marketplace, but they're engaged in deen, because their heart is with Allah. Their tongue is mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's deen. Whereas a person might be praying right by the Kaaba, but their heart's busy with what they'll have at the hotel, and whether they'll have shrimp curry or not for lunch. So that prayer is dunya. So We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we be of those who raise that which Allah has commanded to be raised, and who put down that which Allah has commanded us to put down. So this is what we wanted to look at today, of these two names, Al-Mu'izz, the one who grants honor, and Al-Mudhill, the one who abases. Next class we're going to look at Al-Sami' and Al-Basir, the hearing and the seeing. بإذن الله تعالى. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Any questions, inshallah? There's a question. Is it possible to derive the definition of Allah's names from a source besides the definitions given in the Qur'an or from Arabic roots? Yes, it is. The meanings of Allah's names are, meanings are understood from texts through a number of ways, right? By the expression of the text, by its indication, by its implications, right, about what's within them. So the ulama, when they define things, sometimes the definition is obvious. Who is al-qawi, the strong? Right? Everyone knows what quwwa is, right? But what does that mean? Right? It requires an awareness. Not texts are of two texts that relate to a matter of two types. There's specific texts. Inna al-quwwata lillahi jami'a. All power belongs to Allah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There's no ability nor power except for Allah. But their meanings also understood, not just from specific texts, but from the general sense, from the generality of what one knows, right, about that which is mentioned and whom it's mentioned regarding. Right? So deduction, is direct and indirect, explicit and implicit. Right? So, and just as we saw today, a number of the meanings that are expressed, right, by the, like we saw today, for example, when Imam Zarruq said regarding Al-Mu'izz, the one who grants honor, that the way one connects to Allah through it is to tastansirahu ta'ala, and tastansir Allah, to seek to give victory to Allah over yourself, right? This is not just something that he's making up. This is exactly what is. This is, the words of the ulama are they're deriving meanings from the texts, right? In tansurullaha yansurkum. If you give victory to Allah, He grants victory to you, and there's the shared meaning there, right? That is has a sense of triumph. It has a meaning of ascendancy. Right? Also has a meaning of being rare. There's a whole number of meanings, and we'll see. Al-Aziz we've looked at, right? Before. And so this is the one who grants that meaning to others, right? And if you register for the class, which you can do from the Seekers Hub page, you can have access to the previous lessons. We didn't touch upon the meaning of Al-Aziz because we looked at it earlier. Class, because it has meaning of being. It has a sense of ascendancy, being high. And so Al-Aziz is also the one who's unknowable. He's so great, he's unknowable in his reality. But also the highness that he Al-Ghalibu ala amri, who's triumphant, right? And also because it's ascendant, it's meaning he's transcendently above the qualities of created things. And all these meanings are affirmed in the texts, right? The only thing is sometimes people understand how and where the ulama are deriving things, and sometimes they don't get it. But if they don't get it, it's their fault, and not that of those who know, right? Which is why they say, إِذَا لَمْ تَرَ الْهِلَالَ فَسَلِّمْ لِقَوْمٍ رَأَوْهُ بِالْأَبْصَارِ. If you do not see the new moon, then submit to the witness of those who see it with their own two eyes. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد